My name's Eli Cotter. I've been a ranger here in southern West Virginia, going on 17 years now. Grew up just one ridge over from where I work. Folks used to call this stretch of forest God's Elbow because of the way the river bends and the mountains hug in tight around it. When I was a boy, my granddad told me never to be in the woods after sundown. Said the old land remembers even if we don't. Said there are things in those hollers that don't care if you believe in them or not. I used to laugh at that. Said he was superstitious, stuck in the past. But that man never once entered the woods after dark. Not for hunting, not for search parties, not even when the dogs got out. I should have listened closer. What I'm about to tell you, I never wrote this in any report. Never put it in a log. I know how it sounds, but I also know what I saw, what I felt, and I know someone needs to hear it. October 17th, 2021. Weather was clear. I was on patrol, alone. Standard run through the northern boundary of the Monongahela. I got a radio call about smoke near the East Ridge, just off the South Fork Trail. Thought maybe a camper ignored the fire ban. Happens more than you'd expect. I hiked in just before dusk. Took me a little over an hour to reach the ridge, but by the time I got there, the smoke was gone. No fire, no campsite, no people. I turned back. That's when I realized, too, the trail wasn't behind me. I'd marked it, same as always, a red ribbon tied around a low branch. Only now, it wasn't there. The ribbon was gone. Trees that were supposed to be familiar looked off, like they'd shifted a little. Like someone rearranged them while I wasn't looking. I chalked it up to low light and fatigue. Told myself to stay calm and get my bearings. Pulled out my GPS. Battery was fine, but it couldn't find signal. Just flickering green dots. I started walking west, figuring I'd hit the stream that runs near the fire road. Should have only taken 20 minutes. Instead, it felt like I was walking in circles. The sounds were wrong. No owls, no crickets. Just this thick, low hum. Like when power lines are close by, except there were no lines out there. Just woods. Then the smell hit me. If you've ever worked around game or been to a kill site, you know that smell. Wet blood and meat turned sour. But this was stronger, thicker, like the air itself had spoiled. I turned my light toward the brush and saw something crouched low beside a tree. First thought was maybe a bear, but it didn't move like a bear. Didn't breathe like one either. No huffing, no snorting, just stillness. My light caught the side of its head, skin like stretched wax, almost see-through in places. I could see veins, dark and thin like threads. No fur. Its limbs were too long. Arms reached nearly to the ground. Then it looked at me. Eyes caught the light like glass, not glowing, just reflecting, like a deer's, but higher up. Way too high. Its mouth opened, slow and wide, but sideways, from cheek to cheek. Didn't make a sound. I didn't wait. I bolted. Compass in my hand, light swinging wild. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. When I finally stopped, I was at the creek. I recognized the rocks, the bend in the bank. My watch said it had been 3 hours since I'd seen the smoke, but the moon hadn't moved. Same spot, same shape, like time forgot to pass. I made it back to my truck sometime after midnight. My boots were soaked and my radio was cracked down the side like it had been dropped, though I don't remember dropping it. Next morning, I went back. Had to. Left my day pack out there when I ran, except it wasn't there. No tracks, no broken branches, no signs I'd ever been there. Just a ring of stones, blackened and scorched, set in a perfect circle, right where I remember seeing the thing crouched. I never told the station the truth. Filed the call as an unconfirmed fire check. That's what you do around here. You keep it clean. Keep it quiet. A week later, I got reassigned. No warning, no explanation. Just a call from Central telling me my post was being consolidated and that I'd be moving north. When I asked why, they said something about staff rotation. I've been in this job long enough to know a brush-off when I hear one. Since that night, I've spoken to 2 other rangers, both from different counties. Both told me nearly the same thing. Vanished hikers, lights in the trees, the smell, the stillness. One of them quit, packed up and moved clear out of state. Wouldn't say where. Just said, "Don't go looking, don't go asking," and I haven't. But something's happening in these woods, something that goes back generations, maybe longer. This ain't just about lost hikers. This land, these hills, hold on to things, and whatever's out there, it knows when you're alone, when you're off trail, and once it sees you, you don't see anything the same again. Some of us get to come back. Most don't. If you're still listening, ask yourself why you are. Curiosity? Or did something in this feel familiar? Either way, subscribe to MindFuel for the rest of the story, because this is only chapter 1. And the silence out here, it's not just quiet. It's hiding something. They say West Virginia has always held its secrets close. That ain't poetry. That's survival. There's a quiet kind of law around here, the kind passed down without ever being spoken. You don't whistle in the woods. You don't turn around when someone calls your name after dark. And you never, ever cross the ridgeline after the sun dips. Folks say it's just tradition, caution wrapped in old wives' tales. But every one of those rules came from somewhere. A reason someone had to learn the hard way. These hills are full of graves without markers, and some of them never had anything to bury. Between 1952 and now, there have been over 437 documented disappearances across the southern Appalachian region. Not car wrecks, not overdoses, not the kind of vanishings with reasons. These were hikers, loggers, surveyors, children, and yes, even trained personnel who simply stopped being part of this world. Most were alone. Most were last seen just before sundown. None were ever found. The official language calls them unresolved. But around here we say, the hollow kept them. These aren't just isolated tragedies. You can trace them, point by point, on any old topographical map. Line them up and they don't scatter. They circle, they make shapes, clusters that follow the veins of the land. Old mine systems, forgotten graveyards, places even the birds avoid, places where your shadow feels just a little too long. We had a spot near Panther Ridge when I first started. Locals called it Dead Mile, just a strip of trail maybe 80 yards long. But every time someone walked through it, their compass spun like it was drunk. Dogs refused to go in, radios cut out. You'd hear your own voice echo back to you with a delay, like the trees were remembering what you said. We rerouted the trail in 2009. Never told the public why. We just called it a safety concern. But those who've lived here longer, they don't ask. They just nod. Because they know. This hollow don't talk after sundown. And if it does, you don't talk back. I broke that rule once. Just once. October 23rd. 5 days after I saw the thing in the woods. I hadn't been sleeping right. Woke up every night at 3:17, cold sweat, same dream. No sounds, just the forest looking back at me. That night, a call came through from dispatch. Solo camper reported missing out past Briar Hollow. No check-in, no contact. I should have waited for backup, but I didn't. I geared up, told myself it'd be quick. Routine. Maybe he wandered off. Maybe he'd show up embarrassed and dehydrated. But the moment I crossed the tree line, everything changed. No insects, no wind, just the sound of my boots, each step louder than it should have been, like the woods were listening. I found the campsite 20 minutes in, tent zipped shut, lantern hanging unlit, and a folding chair turned to face the woods. like someone sat there for hours, watching something none of us want to see. There was a journal by the fire pit. Last page read, "I keep hearing my own voice in the trees. It says my name, but I haven't spoken out loud since noon. I thought I saw my dad walking just past the tree line. He's been dead since 1998. I don't think I'm alone." That was the last entry. No blood, no struggle, no prints leaving camp, just that chair, that journal, and something far off in the brush, mimicking the sound of breathing. Not animal, not wind, the deliberate kind. In, outside, and then holding, waiting. I stood there for nearly 10 minutes, afraid to move, afraid to turn my light on again. When I finally did, the beam caught something low to the ground, just barely visible between the trees. A hand, pale, thin, elbow bent wrong, fingernails dark like they'd rotted from the inside, and just beyond it, a face, not smiling, not snarling, just waiting. I took one step backward, and it took one forward. No sound, no breath. It mirrored me exactly, like it had been practicing. I left the gear, left the campsite, didn't stop until I crossed back over the ridgeline. As soon as I did, my radio crackled on again. Dispatch said they'd been trying to reach me for 35 minutes, but I'd only been in the woods, 20, maybe 22. I said I didn't find the camper. That was true. What I didn't say is that something found me. Before anyone gave it a name, before we called it the Hollow, before the markers were pulled from maps and the trails rerouted quietly through state orders that never made the papers, there was a boy. His name was Emery Delvin, 10 years old, blonde hair, gap tooth, used to wear his boots on the wrong feet. Emery disappeared in the fall of 1953, just outside Briar Hollow. His father, Henry Delvin, said they were out squirrel hunting early that morning, standard tradition for a Saturday. They had breakfast, packed sandwiches, and were barely an hour into the woods when it happened. Henry stopped to relieve himself, said Emery was just a few paces ahead, walking the game path like he always did. 90, maybe 100 yards. That was the last he ever saw his son. He called for him, shouted so loud the crows took off in threes, ran up the path, rifle half drawn, expecting to see Emery crouched in the brush, maybe chasing a rabbit, maybe grinning behind a tree like he always did when he played too rough. But the trail was empty. The only thing Henry found was a patch of grass burned black. A near-perfect circle, maybe 8 feet across. No flame, no smoke, just scorched. Like something came down hot, but never left a mark beyond that. No blood, no shoe prints, no sign of a struggle. They brought in dogs, 50 volunteers, men from 3 counties. My own grandfather was there too. He told me that was the last search party he ever joined. Said something wasn't right. Not in the woods, not in the air. Said you couldn't trust your own ears out there. One of the dogs broke loose from its handler and ran headfirst into a creek, drowned before anyone could reach it. Another man, Jim Pritcher, went missing for 2 hours. When they found him, he was on his back, eyes wide, whispering a song they said didn't have words. Just a low, humming tune, over and over, like it had been planted there. He never spoke again. They brought him out on a stretcher, muttering that melody with his mouth half closed. He died 6 weeks later. Stroke. Age 42. His wife said he would hum that same tune in his sleep, night after night, even when he stopped breathing. A woman named Maylene Hart, who lived right up along the tree line, said she heard something that night. Said she didn't sleep a wink. Told the sheriff she heard singing in the trees. Voices, but not like church voices. Thin, childlike. Said they were singing the name Emery, but not like a call, like a lullaby. over and over. Ray. She moved to Tennessee 3 days later, left the porch light on when she left, never came back. The official story? Presumed lost. Animal predation likely. No remains recovered. They printed it in the Charleston Gazette, tucked beneath a grain ad. But in the hollows, the truth got passed another way. Quietly. Through glances, warnings, and the kind of conversations that don't happen with outsiders around. That's when folks stopped letting their kids go outside after sunset. That's when the old bells started showing up on the porches again. Little rusted dinner bells hung by twine, meant to be rung if a child was in danger or if something came too close to the house. Some folks still keep them up. You can hear them ring sometimes out toward the timber roads. Just one chime, never more, like something's testing the line, waiting to see who answers. Emery's name was never said out loud after that fall. You can still find his photo if you dig deep enough. Local archives, county library, his face frozen in time, half a smile, a missing tooth, a boy who never got to turn 11, a boy who stepped just a few feet too far into something none of us understand. And whatever that thing is, it hasn't stopped taking. There's a place down in McDowell County, just off Route 52, where the hills lean hard and the mist doesn't burn off till mid-morning. Locals call it Deadwind Slope, but on the old records, it's listed as Welch Number 6. A coal mine, opened in 1868, shuttered in 1914. Not because the vein ran dry, because the men stopped coming back up. Between August and December of that final year, 13 miners were marked missing without explanation. They weren't crushed. They weren't buried alive. They disappeared, one by one. Helmets left behind, tools dropped mid-swing, no cave-ins, no collapses, no air warnings, just men, gone. And in their place, symbols, carved deep into the shale, scratched into metal piping, etched over the coal chute doors in chalk and oil, and, in 2 cases, something they said smelled like blood. No one could read them, not even the foreman, not English, not Latin, not Cherokee, just shapes that felt wrong to look at for too long. In 1983, a group of spelunkers from Pennsylvania tried to explore the lower tunnels. One of them came out raving about hearing music underground, said it wasn't echo, wasn't water, wasn't his friends, said it was a hymn he hadn't heard since childhood, something his grandmother used to hum when she thought no one was listening. Only problem was, he was born deaf. Whole town knew it. He'd never heard a song in his life. His sister said afterward he started drawing pictures of mouths, open ones, rows and rows of teeth, all stretching the wrong way. 6 weeks later, he took a nail to his own ears, said the mine had followed him home. The state blocked off access after that, put up a fence, posted a warning. Unsafe geology, do not enter. But it didn't stop the disappearances. Hikers, 2 surveyors, a teenager from Gary who cut through the woods on a dare. They all vanished within half a mile of the shaft, all within 3 years. Then, in 1989, a sinkhole opened on the north face. The Department of Environmental Protection sent in a rescue diver to map out the collapse. See if anything had shifted beneath the old shaft. His name was Darnell Brooks, certified, experienced, former Marine. He was in the mine for 42 minutes. When they pulled him out, he wouldn't stop screaming. His body was dry, but his gear was soaked through. They said it was like he'd been submerged in something thick, something that clung to him, not water, not oil, something that moved. It took 2 days before he could speak again. His official statement was only 3 sentences long. I'll read it exactly. The mine is breathing. The walls weren't rock, they were flesh, and it said my name in my own voice. That's all he ever said about it. He quit his job, left the state, moved to Montana under a new name. But the story didn't leave with him. The rescue crew said the moment he came up, every lantern in the staging tent blew out at once. No wind, no spark, just a pulse, like something inside the mine had exhaled. To this day, the mine remains sealed. You can still find the entrance if you know where to look, just past the black oak that splits in two. You'll smell it before you see it, like copper and damp hair. Sometimes folks say they hear knocking, always in threes. One of the old surveyors said it sounded like someone tapping from inside the rock. But what I remember most are the symbols. They've been showing up again, not just at the mine, out near ranger posts, on trailheads, etched faintly into tree bark, almost invisible unless the light hits just right. Same shapes, same feeling, like something trying to remember itself. Or maybe something trying to be remembered. Whatever it is, the deeper you go, the warmer it gets. Like the mountain isn't hollow, it's alive. And it's waiting. Where we shift to a 1990s sheriff who recovers something that shouldn't be alive. Each chapter builds the threat. And don't forget, if you're watching this, subscribe to MindFuel to keep the lights on. We're just getting to the part people don't talk about. There's a stretch of road just outside of Bradshaw. 2 lanes, unlined, runs along a creek that rises fast when it rains. Most GPS systems won't route you through it, and the locals, they'll tell you the same thing every time. If you see a man on the road, don't stop, don't slow down, don't even blink, just keep driving. They call him the Radio Man. First reported sometime in the winter of 1991, a nurse named Carla Jenkins was on her way back from a night shift in Welch. Said she saw someone standing dead center in the road, male, tall, pale as chalk, dressed in a torn army coat and holding what looked like an old military radio, heavy World War II era with frayed wires and cracked knobs. But the part she remembered most? He didn't have eyes, just skin where they should have been, smooth, blank, and he was humming. Not out loud, but through the radio. A low signal hiss, broken only by the sound of someone humming a song through the static. She swerved, car hit the ditch. By the time a tow truck arrived, the man was gone. The next morning, her neighbor, an older woman who lived alone, was found in bed. No trauma, no illness, eyes open, just gone. Like she never woke up. That's when the pattern started. Every time he's seen, someone nearby doesn't wake up the next morning, doesn't scream, doesn't struggle, just lies down and never moves again. Between 1991 and 1997, there were 6 confirmed sightings, 8 deaths, always within 2 miles, always within 12 hours. Every person who claimed to see him described the same thing: a man with no eyes. Holding a battered, humming field radio, one that shouldn't be able to broadcast anymore. Each time, he stood still, never moved, like he was waiting for something only he could hear. One sighting came from a West Virginia state trooper. The man had pulled over near a landslide just past dawn, saw a figure up ahead, radio in hand. As he approached on foot, he said the static from the man's radio began to bleed into his own police scanner, even with the engine off. The same hiss, followed by a faint recording, a child's voice whispering, "He's already here." The trooper returned to his vehicle, found his canine dead in the back seat. No wounds, no marks, just gone. They started calling him a harbinger, not the cause, just the signal. A warning you'd already been marked. One local said it best: "You don't die when you see the radio man. Somebody else does. Somebody close. It's like he's trading one life for another." I only tell you this because I saw him myself 2 years ago. Solo shift in the southern range, down past Big 4. Took a tent. No cell service out there. Radio's the only line in or out. Middle of the night, I woke up. Not to noise, to silence. Total silence. No crickets, no wind, not even my own breathing. I looked out through the tent flap, and maybe 50 feet from the tree line, there was a man. Still, staring. Or I thought he was staring, no eyes, no expression, just standing there, holding that same boxy, olive-drab field radio, and from it, static. Then, my own voice. It repeated something I had said earlier that day, a joke, a throwaway line. I muttered under my breath while setting up camp, word for word, same inflection, same breath, like the woods had memorized me. He was gone by morning. But when I got back to the ranger station, my supervisor, Donnie Wexler, hadn't shown up for work. I drove to his trailer myself. He was in bed, still warm, eyes open, no cause of death, not a mark on him. They ruled it sudden cardiac arrest. But I know better. I was supposed to die that night. But the radio man, he took Donnie instead. And the worst part? That radio signal? I've heard it twice since. Once near Cranberry Glades. Once in a place I won't even name on this tape. Same sound, same hum, like something waiting just outside the reach of your name. And the only way you know it's there is after it leaves. Where we finally touch on a corpse that didn't decompose because it hadn't died. And if you're still listening, subscribe to MindFuel. Because this isn't just a story. It's a warning. And we're only scratching the surface. It was supposed to be a routine call. Late September, cold wind setting in early, frost edging the ridges before dawn. A hiker named Ellis Rourke had placed a distress call on a handheld two-way, short-range emergency frequency, only picks up within 2 miles of a ranger tower. His voice was clipped, distant, strained. He said 6 words, just 6. I'm looking at something that's wrong. Then silence. We triangulated the signal to a section of forest not far from Beartown State Park. But here's the thing. That signal came from inside a mapped dead zone. No trails, no towers, no reason anyone should have been there. I logged it as an emergency response and went in alone before dark. Packed light, brought thermal, radio, compass, all useless. Coordinates led me about 3 miles off-grid, down into one of those old-growth hollers where the light doesn't quite settle. Trees warped at the base, moss growing on all 4 sides of the trunks. The air smelled still, like the inside of a locked trunk. And then, at the bottom of the slope, there it was. A cabin, not rotted, not sunken, fresh, nails still gleaming. Wood unstained by weather, like it had been built yesterday. But what stopped me, cold, was that it had no windows and no door. 4 walls, a pitched roof, a chimney with no soot, but not a single way in, not a crack, not a hinge, not even a seam where a door should have been. Just blank, flawless timber, like it hadn't been constructed, like it had grown there. I circled it once, slowly. Didn't touch it. Just watched. On the far side, my boot caught on a root, and I fell forward, only for a second. When I looked up, I saw myself. Same clothes, same gear. Except I was walking the opposite direction, back around the cabin, same pace, same rhythm, just in reverse, step for step. His or my head never turned, but I could feel it watching me. I stood there, frozen. My breath didn't fog. My radio was silent. No wind, no birds. And the moment I turned to run, my compass spun twice and cracked down the middle. I didn't care. I bolted. Straight back up that slope, scraping my arms on the bark, tearing through thorn until the woods looked like they were moving again. When I reached the trailhead, I called for backup. 2 other rangers came in with me the next morning. We followed the GPS log to the exact point. But there was no cabin, no clearing, just trees, older than they should have been, like they hadn't been disturbed in 100 years. No signs of Ellis Rourke, not a footprint, not a torn sleeve, just gone. Later, I checked the dispatch audio, the signal he'd sent. It wasn't 6 words, it was 7. I'd misheard in the moment. Slowed down, cleaned up, the tape says, "I'm looking at something that looks like me." His mother still calls once a year. I never told her what I saw. What would I say? That I watched myself circle a house that couldn't exist? That some piece of me stayed behind? That whatever took Ellis might still be wearing him? I don't patrol that sector anymore. None of us do. It's listed as unstable terrain now. But when the wind shifts just right, you can hear something creak deep in the trees, like beams under weight, like a structure shifting where no structure should be. And if you look too long at that place on the map, your reflection might flinch before you do, where the shape of something not quite human begins watching from the ridgelines, and the missing begin to return. And if you're still with us, subscribe to MindFuel, because these stories don't end. They wait. There are places in these mountains that don't show up on any map, not because they were never drawn, but because something drew them out, erased the ink, folded the paper, buried them under time and brush, and a silence so deep it bends the air around it. We didn't mean to find it. Spring of 2002. I was with a remote geological survey team, contracted to scan for erosion patterns after a winter slide near the Tug Fork line. Equipment flagged an anomaly. Something about the soil density near one of the old ridges didn't match. We followed it up, through deadfall and blackberry thickets that hadn't been cleared in decades. And then suddenly, no transition, no warning, the woods just stopped. And we were standing at the edge of a town, perfectly preserved. 13 buildings, wood cabins, a trading post, and at the center, a church, stone-faced and blackened by time. No signs of collapse, no rot. Windows intact. Even the curtains inside were still white, unmoved, like someone had dusted them yesterday. But here's the part that made us all stop cold. Every clock, on every wall, mantel, and stovetop, had stopped at exactly 7:13 p.m. Not a second passed. Like time itself had been paused, not broken. We searched the homes. No bodies, no blood, no signs of panic. Plates still on tables, water pitchers half full. One even had bread dough set to rise, fossilized by air. But no people, no footprints, not even dust disturbed. The church held the answers, or at least something close. Under the pulpit, in a cedar drawer, we found 5 journals, dated from 1911 through 1923. Same hand, different entries. The final pages were smeared, ink trailing off mid-word, as if the writer had looked up and never looked back down. One phrase showed up again and again, the whispering one in the trees. Sometimes with sketches, long, thin limbs, black hollows for eyes. A face drawn wrong, like the memory of a face seen only in dreams. But what chilled me wasn't the figure. It was the way the townsfolk responded to it. They didn't pray for safety. They didn't run. They just wrote, as if that's all they could do to keep it distant. Words instead of weapons. One of our team, Mark Hill, volunteered to explore the church basement. Said he felt like something was watching. Said he wanted to feel the room breathe. That's what he told us. Feel the room breathe. He descended at 4:02 p.m. Never came back up. We called out, used ropes, sent down lights, nothing. Not even an echo. 48 hours later, a call came in from a highway patrol unit 30 miles east. They'd found a body on the side of an access road near Eiger. Clothes torn, fingernails split, dehydrated, emaciated. ID confirmed it was Mark. But here's the part that broke something in all of us. His body was aged, skin spotted, hair white. Dental records matched, but the coroner said he looked 75 years old. Mark was 38. He'd only been missing 2 days. We left that place, burned the coordinates, never filed the report. Some of us quit. Others just never came back to work. And me? I hear whispers now, only when I pass under black birch trees. They never speak clear, never form words, just a rhythm, a kind of pulse behind your teeth. And when the wind dies, you hear it say, not out loud, but inside your skull, we remember. We don't know what happened to that town, but it didn't vanish. It was paused, like something put it on hold, waiting for someone to press play. And the moment Mark stepped below that church, maybe that's exactly what he did, where something from the ridge lines begins coming closer, and the people who disappeared may not have stayed gone. And remember, subscribe to MindFuel, because if you don't keep listening, it keeps talking anyway. They found it in a crawl space, tucked behind the baseboards of a ranger station decommissioned back in '91, a slim black ledger, leather worn like old skin, bound with copper wire that had gone green with age. No name on the cover, no initials, just one thing scratched deep into the back in childlike block letters. Keep count. The station had belonged to Ranger Ellis Gant, served 41 years in the southern district of Monongahela National Forest. Never married, no kids, died in 2003. Official report, natural causes. But if you ask the few rangers who served under him, they'll all tell you the same thing. Ellis didn't go quietly. He knew something was coming for him, and he'd been tracking it for decades. Inside the ledger, names, hundreds. Every missing person between 1954 and 2002 within a 100-mile radius. Each name dated, age, last known location, and beside about a third of them, a second date. Always in the future. We thought it was a mistake, but then we cross-referenced the names. Every second date lined up with a confirmed discovery, usually a body, sometimes a piece, sometimes just enough to close the file and declare it done. But Ellis, he had written them before the remains were ever found. Some entries were stranger still, dates that hadn't happened yet. We checked, and on more than one occasion, someone listed did vanish, right on cue. Names no one else had ever tied to danger. Locals, campers, even another ranger. Gone, just like the ledger said. And then we got to the last page. Only one line. No name, no coordinates. Just this. May 6th. The forest will take me next. I've heard my mother calling, and she's been dead 22 years. He wrote that 2 weeks before he was found in a ranger cabin 20 miles from the nearest trail, slumped in a chair, eyes wide open, mouth full of dirt, no wounds, no sign of struggle. Every clock in the cabin had stopped at 3:33 a.m. No signs of forced entry, nothing stolen, but the journal was gone. We didn't know there was a second copy until renovations started this year. That's how the one behind the crawl space was discovered. But what chills me isn't the prediction. It's what was added to the final page. A faint line, different pen, same hand, newer ink. It wasn't there in earlier scans. It just appeared. It reads, "You only think she's your mother." Since finding that ledger, 3 more disappearances have happened, all matching names listed in its pages. All on the exact dates Ellis Gant wrote decades ago. Some believe he was part of it. Others think he was trying to stop it. I'm not sure he even understood what he was keeping count of. But I know this much. If the forest can speak, then he was listening longer than anyone ever has. And if you listen too long, you might stop knowing what voice is your own. If you ever hear someone you've buried calling your name from between the trees, don't answer, don't speak. And whatever you do, don't write it down. Where we step beyond stories and start asking what's watching the storytellers. And if you're still here, still breathing in the silence, subscribe to MindFuel. Because the stories don't stop. They wait for you to come closer. The mountains keep their secrets, but the oldest voices still remember. We found her near the ridge, an Appalachian woman whose eyes carried the weight of generations. She didn't hesitate. No fear in her voice, just a quiet, worn knowledge. "It's not a curse," she said. "It's a bargain. We don't bother them, and they don't take too many. But that's changing." Her hands trembled like brittle leaves. They're hungrier now. Hunger, not for food, but for something else. Something that has been sleeping beneath these hills for longer than memory. Longer than the oldest trees. Something waiting for the rules to slip, the lines to blur. We brought the map back. Every disappearance we traced over 70 years, plotted on a map of these hills and hollers. At first it seemed random, but as the points connected, a shape emerged. A symbol formed from shadows, a pattern that didn't belong to any chart or legend we'd ever seen. And then the call came through the radio, distorted, breaking through static like a whisper clawing to be heard. "It's dusk now." The words echoed in our minds like a warning. The sun was setting on everything we thought we knew. And in these hills, when dusk falls, the silence isn't empty. It's waiting. Waiting for the bargain to be kept or broken. This isn't a tale made to scare children around campfires. It's a warning carved into the bones of this land. A promise whispered by every gust of wind threading through the pines. So if you ever find yourself near these hollers at sunset, listen closely and remember, some bargains aren't meant to be broken. You've come this far. To hear these stories, you've looked into the darkness others refuse. For more true stories that unravel the unknown, subscribe to MindFuel, where every shadow has a story and every story pulls you deeper. As night falls on these mountains, the stories we've shared linger in the dark, like embers refusing to die. A trail camera, forgotten and dusty, captured something no one wanted to believe. A shadow slipping from behind a tree, limbs stretching impossibly long, bending in ways that no human body should. And then, a smile. Not warm, not inviting. Something else entirely. This is more than folklore. More than old wives' tales whispered by the firelight. It's a warning etched into the very soil of West Virginia's hills. If you ever find yourself wandering these woods, do not hike alone. Do not answer voices that call from the shadows. And whatever you do, don't stay past dusk. The dark doesn't just fall here. It takes. Thank you for watching. To uncover more truths hiding beneath the surface of the ordinary, subscribe to MindFuel. Because some stories don't end when the screen goes black. They're only just beginning.